Welcome to Griffonomics. Today, we're diving into Lantronix Inc., trading under the ticker LTRX.
Glad to be here, and this is going to be a really interesting one.
Yeah, it really is. Because the mission of today's deep dive is to basically unpack a huge paradox for you. We're looking at a company where the long-term growth inflection is completely masked right now by a near-term technical stock price depression.
Right, a massive disconnect.
Exactly. And that depression stems from two specific things: a dilutive $30 million public equity raise and some temporary spending delays in their legacy federal networking product lines.
Yeah, which definitely spooked the market. To figure out what's really happening under the hood, we've pulled together a bunch of different sources today. We're looking at their summer 2026 corporate disclosures, the Q3 2026 earnings transcripts, some recent M&A press releases, and a full slate of Wall Street consensus reports.
So the hook here for you listening: how does a company generating just like massive momentum in AI and defense see its stock price essentially cut in half? And more importantly, does this represent a rare asymmetric mispricing window?
That is the big question. But, to understand the opportunity, we first have to explain exactly why the stock is sitting in Wall Street's penalty box right now.
Right, let's start with the bad news, the overhang.
Yeah, the secondary float overhang, the mechanical variables of this are what really drove the sell-off. So let's look at the math of their May 28th, 2026 public equity transaction.
All right.
At the time, the stock was trading at a relative peak around $8.45. But then the company decided to just flood the float with 4.17 million new common shares.
Wow, that was a ton of new shares hitting the market all at once.
Exactly. And to incentivize buyers to take down that block, they priced it at a really steep discount, down to $7.20 per share. Plus, they included a 625,000 share underwriter option.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if you aren't staring at stock charts all day, terms like flooding the float can sound a bit, abstract. Think of the company like a completely healthy marathon runner.
Oh, I like this.
Right. So they're in absolute peak physical condition. But right before a massive race, they decide to donate a pint of blood. Momentarily, they're going to look terrible. They're going to be pale, stumbling, and the crowd is immediately going to start betting against them.
Yeah. That's exactly what happened here.
But if you actually check their vitals, their resting heart rate, their oxygen levels, they are incredibly strong. And in the stock market, that blood donation sparked an immediate double-digit downward correction.
It really did. It dragged the price all the way down to around $5.19 by mid-July.
Which brings us to the actual vitals, the financial print.
Right. We have to reconcile that near-term equity dilution against their Q3 baseline, which is honestly, it's highly robust. In Q3, they posted $30.2 million in revenue.
That's solid.
Very solid. And non-GAAP earnings per share came in at 4 cents. On top of that, year-to-date, they've generated $7.9 million in positive operating cash flow.
Wait, positive operating cash flow?
Yep. And this is key. They have a highly disciplined debt reduction program. They actually stripped nearly $4 million of leverage off the balance sheet over the trailing 12 months.
Leaving them with what, like under $10 million in debt?
Exactly. $8.7 million left in debt.
Okay, so that naturally begs the question. If their cash flow is so strong and they're paying down debt, why take the massive dilution hit to raise $30 million in the first place?
Well, the answer to that is their aggressive pivot towards software.
Right, the M&A engine.
Yeah. They took that fresh capital and almost immediately deployed it. We're looking at a definitive July 7th, 2026 transaction. They purchased Vecima Networks' Telematics asset tracking unit.
Telematics, so that's fleet tracking, logistics, that sort of thing.
Exactly. And they paid 16.5 million Canadian dollars in an all-cash structure. It was 14.5 million at closing, and then another 2 million payable by year-end.
Okay, so a pure cash acquisition using the funds they just raised.
Right. And what's fascinating here is the immediate mechanical benefit. By absorbing Vecima's Nero global tracking software, Lantronix instantly infuses an incremental $4.5 million in annual recurring revenue, or AR.
High margin ARR,
Yeah.
which in the tech world is basically the holy grail.
Oh, absolutely. And we're talking about scale, too. This places 125,000 active telemetry asset tags straight under their active management.
So they essentially bought a massive pre-existing customer base that pays them a subscription every single month.
Exactly. And it effectively accelerates the company's structural push to scale its software margins way past their corporate averages. They are aggressively pushing recurring revenue toward a double-digit target mix.
Okay, so the M&A side is securing those sweet software margins. But their organic hardware growth is also doing something crazy right now, driven by drones.
Yeah, an unprecedented geopolitical shift in the drone space, actually.
Right, so let's do a strict forensic audit of their embedded IoT solutions segment. Because in Q3, this segment surged 22% year over year, which is explosive.
It is. And the regulatory moat here is the real story. In December 2025, the Federal Communications Commission dropped a landmark ban on the Chinese hardware giant DJI.
Who were basically the undisputed kings of the drone market before that.
Exactly. And that ban created this impenetrable regulatory moat overnight. It forced all these domestic and defense clients to pivot entirely away from Chinese hardware.
They had to scramble for trusted U.S.-based hardware boards.
Right, boards that are fully NDA and TAA compliant, which is exactly what Lantronix makes.
So they basically had the entire domestic market handed to them by the FCC.
Pretty much. And you can see it in the numbers. They raised their fiscal 2026 drone revenue outlook from an initial $8 to $12 million up to a new range of $10 to $14 million.
And management's forward visibility on this looks incredibly strong, right?
Yeah, extremely strong. They are validating that these unmanned autonomous compute modules should roughly double, eventually commanding an elite 15 to 20% mix of total aggregate revenue by fiscal 2027.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. And I want to present the numbers purely as they are reported in our sources, staying completely out of the politics here.
Sure.
The Department of War recently put forward a $75 billion budget proposal for the Defense Autonomous Warfare Group, the DIWG program. That is a staggering amount of capital flowing into the exact sector where Lantronix just secured a regulatory monopoly.
It's massive. But Lantronix isn't just sitting there riding the drone wave with legacy tech. They are fundamentally changing what they sell to these drone manufacturers.
Right. They're moving up the stack.
Exactly. They are transitioning from being just a basic component provider, like, just supporting a camera, to becoming a full intelligent system enabler.
So what does that actually look like in the field?
Well, they're expanding across the entire defense stack. We're talking full flight control, counter-UAS payloads, which means detecting hostile drone operators, and spectrum dominance platforms.
Spectrum dominance. Basically ensuring the drone can still think and fly, even when the enemy is jamming its GPS and radio signals.
Right. These platforms are engineered to run edge AI models locally in heavily contested, GPS-denied environments.
Which requires incredibly sophisticated hardware and software alliances. They aren't building this all in a vacuum.
Oh, definitely not. The structural strength of their cross-industry partnerships is key here. For starters, they are positioned as Qualcomm's key Western scaling partner for Dragon Wing-based OpenQ module.
Qualcomm. So they have the absolute highest end of AI processing power.
Yep. And they're also collaborating with Teledyne FLIR.
Ah, for thermal imaging.
Exactly. Advanced on-device thermal image signal processing. Then they have this really strategic joint venture with Unusual Machines. They are merging Lantronix compute power with UMass flight controls.
To do what exactly?
Or to secure specific tranches of the $1.1 billion drone dominance program. They are packaging it all together.
Wow. And they're also not ignoring the lower-cost commercial markets either.
Right. They expanded their multi-silicon strategy with MediaTek's Genio chips. That allows them to capture the highly price-sensitive European and Asian robotics markets where Qualcomm might just be too expensive.
It's a very smart multi-tiered strategy. But I want to pivot the conversation here because, while defense drones are the flashy headline you see on the news, there is this massive, quiet revenue engine operating in the background.
AI data centers.
Exactly. AI data centers.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where the launch of their SLC 9000 Advanced Out-of-Band Console Manager comes in. They debuted it at Cisco Live 2026.
Out-of-band, or OOB. This is basically the emergency backdoor into a server rack if the main network goes down, right?
Exactly. And they engineered the SLC 9000 to specifically exploit the hyperscaling AI data center networking market. This market is projected to reach $103 billion by 2030, running an 18% CAGR.
$103 billion market. That is just astronomical. Let's dissect the actual architecture of this hardware, because it's not just a basic switch.
No, it's highly advanced. Physically and logically, it incorporates up to 48 serial ports. But the killer feature is its automated 4G and 5G cellular failover.
Which means if the main fiber line is cut, it instantly connects to a cell tower.
Right. And that eliminates what the industry calls engineering truck rolls.
Right, where you have to pay a highly specialized engineer to physically drive a truck to a remote data center just to plug a laptop into a server to reboot it.
Which is incredibly costly and slow. The cellular failover fixes that mean time to repair instantly. Plus, it has an API-first framework that natively hooks into Terraform, Ansible, and ServiceNow.
So all the automated IT scripts can just talk directly to the Lantronix hardware to fix things without a human ever touching it?
Exactly. And this rollout triggers a highly visible cloud migration path for the company. They have this massive pre-existing base of legacy SLC 8,000 customers.
So as those legacy customers upgrade their data centers for AI, they have to buy the new 9,000 box.
Yep. And when they do, Lantronix systematically attaches its high-margin perception SaaS cloud subscriptions to those distributed hardware setups worldwide.
It's brilliant cross-selling. Do we have an example of the scale of these deployments?
Yeah, they recently did a 50,000-plus site deployment with a Tier 1 U.S. mobile network operator.
50,000 sites. That recurring revenue just compounds so fast. So what does this all mean? We have to synthesize this investment case.
Let's do it.
We have a company trading at roughly $5.19 a share. Given everything we just outlined, does this represent an asymmetric mispricing window?
Well, if you look at the Wall Street analyst community, they are completely ignoring the short-term technical drop from that equity raise. They maintain a unanimous 100% strong buy consensus.
Wow, 100%.
Unanimous,
Yeah.
with price targets scaling up to $11.55 per share, which implies massive upside.
Yeah, it really does. To summarize the whole thing, I think the best analogy is to frame Lantronix as a structurally protected, highly critical hardware toll booth.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. And a software brains engine for the modern, automated, and autonomous age. If you want to build an NDAA-compliant drone or secure an AI data center, you basically have to pay their toll.
It's true, but, this raises an important question. We have to ground this enthusiasm and look at the execution risks.
Always.
Yeah.
What are the major risks outlined in the reports?
There are two critical ones. First, extended federal procurement ordering patterns.
Government delays.
Exactly. They are heavily tied to recurring government shutdown threats. If the government delays a purchase order by 3 months, Lantronix could miss a quarter and the stock takes a hit.
Makes sense.
Yep.
What's the second risk?
The operational pressure of integrating new teams and product lines, specifically the Vecima acquisition. M&A looks great on a spreadsheet, but culturally and technologically integrating 125,000 asset tags is a massive operational hurdle.
It's one thing to buy the recipe, it's another to cook the meal perfectly.
Exactly.
Well, it is an incredibly complex and fascinating dynamic. But before we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought.
Oh, I'm curious where you're going with this.
Well, we've spent all this time talking about Lantronix embedding these localized decision-making AI brains into everything, right?
Yeah.
From military drone swarms to hyperscale data centers.
Yeah.
So what happens to global network security when these edge devices start making real-time autonomous decisions faster than any central human oversight can track? When a military drone is severed from the cloud, making lethal or navigational choices purely on a local compute board.
It's a terrifying but real paradigm shift.
It really is.
Yeah.
The edge isn't just getting smarter, it's getting entirely independent. Something to mull over as you explore this technology on your own.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.